Hello and welcome to the Portals Numerology channel. I'm Kelly Proudfoot and I'm mixing up a bit, and you probably noticed I mix it up a lot because I'm still trying to find my feet on my channel here. The Portals Numerology channel. I have another channel on YouTube called Hedge Witch Herbarium, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to mix them together, but this particular episode we're talking about not cats. She always does that. We're talking about numerology, and I wanted to start offering my numerological readings, which I've been doing for over 30 years. I learnt from a woman who was actually American. She was from Waco, Texas, but that was when I was in Australia. But what I'm doing here is just illustrating the different ways that I use numerology. I mean, I do everything from go to woe, but at the moment I'm just doing a little bit of what I call a 15-minute reading. Now it might go longer because of course I'm going to be explaining things, but I used to do these quicker readings for people who couldn't afford the full-blown reading, which included the yearly interpretations, and that's quite intense. But you've probably seen the free numerology. I don't know why I can't say that I've been doing this for over 30 years. My mouth isn't working with my brain. But I've got the free courses available on the channel at the moment, as you can see. I'm wanting to revamp them in the future, but at the moment, of course, maintaining a full-time job and all that jazz, it's hard to get all those spinning plates happening all the time. But who I'm profiling in this episode is someone who's very near and dear to my heart. It's an Australian artist, and her name is Vali Myers. Now, she passed away in 2003. She was about 72, 73 years of age, but she's quite famous, especially in Australia, but all around the world, especially people in the entertainment industry know about her. Her artwork was beautiful. When I discovered her, actually, it was funny, I was about 20 years of age and I was working in Melbourne, and I would come in on the train, and one day I walked past the bookstore and they had a big table of these books, which was her book about her art. And I've got it now and it's worth like hundreds of dollars, but back then on the table there were so many of them, and it's all her artwork, and some beautiful stuff. I'm going to show it later on too, but it was only $10 a book, and at the time I had a hunch, just buy as many as you can, because I was earning good money at the time. I was doing data entry at a place in Melbourne, Australia, but I just bought the one, and then years later, when I was feeling generous, I thought I'd lend it to a friend of my mother's, and she was a vacuous bitch, but hey, she stole it, and of course one piece of artwork that I'd started on that I'd left inside the book, so that's always pissed me off, and it's my fault too because I have a habit of giving it away. But anyway, another book that she came out with just after she passed, actually, it was her lover Gianni, put together this incredible book with all her artwork, plus of course my favourite one is the Llama's Tide, which is the one here. I want to get it in the poster and have it mounted. It's my favourite piece. But anyway, that's a beautiful book called Night Flower, all about her life. I actually met Vali in the late 90s. She had an art gallery show and I just had to go, and at the time I was, you know, in my early 20s. I was a bit of a flake, and not that anything changed much, but anyway, I went to see her, and because I loved her work, and you know, it was just magical. I went down into the garden, I forget, it was One Tree Gallery or something like that, but she was fantastic, and she must have known I was going through something, because she grabbed me by the upper arms and looked me right in the eyes, and she just said, "Courage." And I'll never forget that, because I also felt that she really meant it. But the funny thing was, she gave me a signed postcard too. I'm just probably the lighting's crap. Me with a light, I'm always talking about that. But anyway, Years later, when I was working, probably 2001, 2 years before she passed away, I was working and I got in contact with her, and I can't remember how. I think I saw a gallery invitation, or maybe it was later anyway. Somehow I got in touch with her and I ended up hanging out with her for quite a long time. For about a year I would go and meet her in the city. I might bring her coffee. She was living in the Nicholson building, I think, at the time, and going up that rickety elevator. It was wonderful. Just, she's so eccentric and interesting, down to earth at the same time. She's an amazing woman, and I realised this morning when I got up I wanted to reaffirm myself properly to the pagan path as a witch, and I just stood here and I accepted that, and I feel really good about that, because I used to always explain it away with scientific terms and psychobabble. And anyway, what I realised when I wanted to do this numerology profile, when I thought about her, it didn't put two and two together. I was thinking about my fire, trying to get my energy back up and all that, and she is the perfect one for it. And it's just serendipity sometimes when you think about something and everything just flows and falls in place. It's interesting. But I thought, no, let me share her story, because she had an amazing story. She started off when she was younger, at an early age, very independent and going off and doing artwork. She left home in the early teens and to do dancing and working in factories. She was just incredible. Her mother was a famous violin player. But I'm going to put my goggles back on so I can see my notes, just so you know, so I apologise in advance if I am projecting or reflecting the light. But anyway, she was born on the 2nd of August in 1930. And when I reduced her, I'm going to stop flashing at you, but when I reduced everything to a single digit, she is, or she was, a 5 destiny. A 5 destiny is somebody who is like the center, the hub of the activity, who's really big on freedom and getting out there, intellectual pursuits and tasting life. And she definitely was that kind of person, very adaptable. And her whole life was like that, but always too was the centre of the hub. She would always be, even though she lived in Il Porto or near Positano in Italy, in a valley that she and her husband years before had stumbled across and ended up living there and turning it into a wildlife sanctuary. But she lived there, but when she wasn't there, she'd be off New York, London, Paris, everywhere, all over the world, showing her artwork to famous people. There's a really great documentary that was made by Ruth Cullen, lovely Aussie lady, and she detailed her whole life in that documentary. You should see it, The Tightrope Walker. It's wonderful. But she would just go and people would put her up, whether it was in the Chelsea Hotel or at their place or wherever, and she would go to these parties, and everyone, she was just the central focus wherever she went, because she was very striking to look at, and also a really great personality. But that 5 destiny just took her places and made her, like I said, the center of the hub right through until her death. Even when she died, she had people around her always, you know, watching over her, and some people were sort of scunging off her, I noticed. She was telling me once about some guy who was playing mind games, coming in drunk and crashing and stealing off her. But the interesting thing about artistic people, they tend to have certain types that hang around them, and some of them not so good. But she was a tough cookie. She didn't suffer fools gladly. But she also has a 2 personality. She was born on the 2nd of August. So a 2 personality is usually someone who's quite even, quite balanced, very balanced emotionally, and very receptive to other people's emotions. They also work well with others, but not so. I think that Vali worked well with others, but she was very much a unique individual spirit. But the 2 personality showed she really did have a heart, like whether it was especially animals. I remember when I visited her there at the Nicholson building, in her gallery, there was often a chicken or 2 with her. She was just really so eccentric but so interesting and down to earth at the same time. I keep saying that, but I think maybe her numbers might reflect that too. But the two personality, big heart, open, love to dance. I went to the Port Jackson Hotel with her a couple of times, and we had drinks, and she just loved to get up and dance. At the time I was in my early 30s, and I was looking up at her and thinking, how can you be so free? And she's older, and I'm older now, and I've only just started saying, you know what, it's time to get back to my authentic self and be who I was supposed to be and all that. But with Vali, apart from the destiny, her life path, which was the 5 and the 2 personality, in the grid, on the grid you can see all the different, where the numbers of your birth date fall, and she has a straight line, 1, 2, 3, the arrow of the planner. She really knew what she was doing, where she was going. She was great at organising and getting other people organised, but she also has the arrow of frustration through the middle of her grid, where there's no numbers. She doesn't have the numbers 4, 5 or 6, and that usually means the arrow of frustration is someone who always seems to have to do it the hard way, and sometimes has a rough way to go. Vali herself had a lot of experiences. She'd been locked up, she'd been on opium, she'd taken herself through some incredible hellscapes and back, always bringing herself back. Very powerful woman in that way, even though there were other people who were there who were willing to do her bidding, but that's the way it goes with powers like that. So I'm sorry, I'm just double checking my cats are nuisances. Sort of, while mummy's distracted, they'll get into stuff. But anyway, Vali was, I think she was frustrated a lot. There were times in her life where there wasn't enough food, where they had to go all the way down a mountain. It took an hour to get down just to go and get scraps for their dogs. They had a lot of dogs, like over 80 dogs or something in this valley where they lived in Positano, or Il Porto, I think. So yeah, it was always tough, but she was just able just to get through it. She would always have a stiff upper lip, and no matter what, she had that real Aussie gumption, but also just that inner, that strong, core, which, is really beneficial to have when you go through life, especially when you go through the stuff that she did, which we'll go over in a sec. But apart from the grid, we go on to the her name, and I am just using her name, Vali Myers, as you're known, in the everyday sphere. When I do the yearly interpretations, I get the full name at birth, and that gives us the more, intrinsic values of what's going on in every year of your life. That's quite intensive. That's why I charge a bit more for those, for a full reading, which has all that involved. But I didn't do that here with Vali because, well, I have in the past, but I wasn't going to share it here, so it's going to take too long. But anyway, to do with her name, you break it down, the consonants and the vowels, and you can look at the training videos to get an idea of what's involved and how the calculations and all that. But how hers breaks down is her motivation is ruled by the number 6. And the interesting thing about the 6 is it's usually a very family, home-centered, harmony kind of number. But it's an interesting thing with her in her family life. She left home really early, and she was always a free spirit out, in the wild, doing what she wanted to do, whether it be dancing or her beautiful drawing and so on. But the 6 motivation is also very much about the arts, and of course she was, as someone said about her once, she exudes the arts. But it's someone who desperately does need that harmony around them in order to exist. So it's amazing, with all the things that she went through, she was still able to maintain that sense of harmony. The 6 motivation is also someone who is really strongly connected to the idea of home. And whether it was Australia or when she was in Il Porto in Italy, It really meant a lot to her. There was a pavilion there. They stumbled across there, her and her husband. They were trying to get off opium. It was a real heavy time, but they cleaned it all up and ended up staying there. And of course, years later, it became a wildlife refuge, thanks to her and the people who helped her along the way. So 6, yeah, very much about the it is usually also real estate, the home, and the idea, the sense of family. And she always had her tribe around her wherever she went. So that was really important, but also definitely the arts. It's all about the arts, whichever she loved. I forget if it was Shelley or one of the poets we used to talk about. Her inner self, this is still going by her name, is ruled by the number 1, which is interesting because the inner self for her, I know she was very individualistic, but I wonder also too if there were a lot of feelings of loneliness, because people have a one inner self, yeah, they like to withdraw themselves, and look, we all do at times, but the one inner self is usually somebody who is very, if not stubborn, always has to do it their way, and it doesn't make sense unless it makes sense to them. And she, I think, was very individualistic, very headstrong, an original thinker. Her artwork, you'll see for yourself, it's just, there's nothing like it. Some people say that it reminds them of the Book of Kells because of the really intricate detail that she did by hand with really fine pelican inks and fine nibbed pens, and all by hand, and really delicate fine work. But it just shows how, you know, she was very unique. And but I wonder if there was a lot of loneliness. When I used to go and visit her, she never wanted me to go home. And I know there was one time she was kept telling me about this guy, a younger guy who was, and I said, you need to call the police. Oh, I don't want to do that to him. I said, well, you don't want to end up 6 feet under or whatever. But yeah, I wonder if that loneliness was something that especially towards the end plagued her. But she did have some really great people around her, including some of the people who still run the Vali Myers Trust in Melbourne. And expression, which is interesting, is ruled by the number 7. And she really did express herself in a spiritual sense. 7 is usually about spirituality, and also deep analysis, sometimes analysis paralysis, but she wasn't like that. She expressed herself. How other people saw her in the world was someone who was very in tune with the spiritual side of life. She was very much a bohemian type woman in her dress and how she came across. But it was funny because when you first see that, she had the thick black eyeliner around her eyes, and she did that in honor of, I don't know which tribe in Africa, but who paint their eyes black to keep the flies out of their eyes. Apparently it scares the flies, and apparently that's why the Egyptians did it too. But so she's very striking. But she also had her face tattooed, and before she had it done, she used to draw it on to get used to it. She's got what she calls a spirit moustache. It's really sweet, but when you see her face, it's just unique, and that shock of red hair and those wild green eyes and that spirit inside in the artwork she did, it was just, what an incredible spirit. So definitely she came across as that. When people saw her, people all of a sudden feel a mystical sense, like she's got the secrets of the universe or something. I think we feel a lot like that with artists sometimes. Look at me using my glasses like an old lady. So then we go on to her karmic lessons, and what that means is the numbers that are missing from her birth date. So she has 3 of them. That's number 2, number 6, and number 8. And number 2, when you have that as a karmic lesson, it usually means that you've got to remember to roll with the punches sometimes and don't allow yourself to sink too deep into depression. A 2 karmic lesson can mean you've got lessons to learn about your emotions, being hypersensitive, maybe toughening up a bit, and you know, don't allow yourself to crash, because someone with a 2 karmic lesson means they've got to learn that lesson, how to toughen up, but also how to work cooperatively with others. the other karmic lesson she had was 6. The 6th karmic lesson, which is interesting, when you have a number that's dominant or somewhere else in your chart, it sort of lessens the effect of a 6 when you find it somewhere else. And in the karmic lessons as a 6, that's usually a lesson to not let others use you a lot, not let them use you as an emotional dumping ground. Oftentimes it's family who do it to you, and I don't know if she had that much of an influence, like with her family, if that, unless it was in her case a karmic lesson, because the 6 is about the home, because she was such a vagabond and traveling everywhere. Maybe that was one of her lessons, you know. But I think she did learn it because she technically did make wherever she landed home. So I think she might have learned that lesson. And also the last karmic lesson that she has is the number 8. The interesting thing about the number 8 as a karmic lesson is that it's already a karmic number. It means that whatever you're dealing with is karmic. It's something that you've carried over from a past life. And with her, with the 8 karmic lesson, it was about using her power of authority wisely. Some people would say that she could be very pig-headed and stubborn and pretty much crack the whip on people, get me this, serve me, you know, stuff like that. So sometimes an 8 karmic lesson can mean you've got to learn how to use that power, authority. Don't you know, at least temper it with compassion. It can also mean issues with ego, and some people would say that with her, but I would say that all artists need to have a certain dose of healthy ego, because, you know, people can be brutal, the critics, but also in order to be able to put one foot ahead of the other and keep making money. And she was very good at that. Although I do think that some of the paintings she sold, she should have charged a lot more, but because she was really incredible, the artwork. So apart from the karmic lessons, when we finish with the karmic lessons, we go down to the subconscious response. And what that means is how you respond in a crisis, or how you respond if it's not so much of a crisis, but just in general. And usually I like to use the example of a house on fire. She has the 6th subconscious response, and what that means is someone with that number is more likely to think about the family heirlooms, who's more likely to get the family pets and the people out of the house. The 6th subconscious response is geared towards family, home. So they're usually, that's the first thing they go to. If they're in a crisis, they might initially, the first thing, I've got to call home, I've got to call mum, I've got to do this or that. So that's her subconscious response. I think it's interesting because a lot of her life was almost nomadic. So to have that as a subconscious response is interesting. Maybe that was something that she always had her finger on the pulse, because when she did finally come back home, I think it was 2000, back to Australia, and she really thought she would find it to be different. But my screen is flickering, so I'm hoping nothing bad is happening anyway. I might pause. Okay, I'm going to try this again, this silly app anyway. We're talking about Vali Myers. We just finished talking about her sixth subconscious response. Usually people in a crisis will think of family, return to home. It's usually what they go to, what they're experiencing. And the next component in her chart would be her hidden tendencies. And usually that's based on multiples of numbers. Now she didn't have any, so she's got 0 hidden tendencies, which I find really interesting because she was an open book. She was pretty much open in your face. You knew exactly what was going on with her. So that wasn't a big deal for her. There was nothing hidden that she had to work on. Now when we move on to the life cycles, this is the last part of the 15-minute reading, and as you've seen, I'm waffling on and there's a lot going on, and I'm going to be inserting pictures just to share her life. So I wanted to go on to the life cycles and the pinnacles. And what we do with the life cycles and the pinnacles, life cycles is the ages where we can look at the standard foundations. What was going on in the background of your life? What were the experiences? What were the energies? But then the pinnacles are about the opportunities in life. So what can come up for you, any experiences that are noteworthy that will, stand out. So the interesting thing about Vali in her first part of her life, and I'm not going to go into all the calculations here because like I said, they're in the videos, but from 0 till 31 years of age, she was under the influence of an 8 life cycle, which meant there was a lot of high-powered people around her. I know, like I said before, her mother was a famous violin player, but she also left home at an early age to go and she wanted to go and dance, and she ended up over in London. But when she was in Melbourne, when she was younger, she was also under the influence of the 1 pinnacle, which meant that she had a lot of opportunities to do things on her own, to be an entrepreneur, to be a self-starter, to be an original thinker, to blaze the path for other people. And she did as a teenager. It's incredible that she was just so free-spirited. Apparently she would go off when she was a kid into the bush or elsewhere on the property and just write and draw. Very close to my heart because I was very much like that, although I didn't run away and go and join a dance troupe and then go to London and then get hooked on opium and all the other wonderful things that she got her fingers into. But so yes, up until the age of 31, she was pretty much a lot of influential people, which helped her with her career, but also a lot of really karmic and very intense things happening to her. When she was in Paris, like I said, she was locked up a couple of times for being a vagrant and whatever, but also getting into opium, getting in with the wrong crowd. But the interesting thing is, at that time when she was in Paris, there was a famous photographer who wrote I always get his name wrong, so I'm just going to say the name of the book. It's Love on the Left Bank. And Vali was highly profiled in that book. A lot of photos of her there, that bohemian life on the street, which was kind of romanticized, but as she said, it was tough. A lot of tough people you had to really watch yourself with, but also drugs, just like it is today. Now, when she went off into the second phase of her life cycle between the ages of 31 and 58, which is interesting because I'm 58 today. There's a lot of epiphanies happening to me today. Anyway, she was governed by the number 2, so the situation and the circumstances for her during that period were, there's a lot of emotions, a lot of heartfelt things, a lot of collaboration with other people. There was a lot learning about partnerships. She was married to a man she was really in love with, Rudy Rappold. And they started that life. They went off to heal and found the pavilion in the valley in Positano, and they just started a new life there. They were just very weak, still trying to get over what they had been going through. So between 31 and 58, though, governed by the number 2, it was a lot about emotions and relationships and heart stuff, but she was also she was very prolific with her artwork, which is interesting because between the ages of 31 and 40, she was under the pinnacle, which is the opportunities, and pivotal events and things like that, under the vibration of the number 6, which again is the family, the home, artistic pursuits, harmony, absolutely needing the equilibrium to be just so. So she would have had to have been really careful. She would have been around a lot of different people in the entertainment industry, especially the music industry. A lot of them just loved her work, understandable. But she was kind of, because of the way she presented herself, especially with that 7 expression, I'm sorry, I've had my glasses on the whole time, you know, probably blinding you. She everywhere she went, people were just like, oh, like she was like the centerpiece, if you know what I mean. And it wasn't just the way she looked, of course it was who she was and the artwork she did, but she was just like, oh my god, this walking goddess kind of thing. But like she said in the documentary, which I thought was interesting, that she gets to know really quickly about other people when she first meets them, but they don't get to meet a thing about her, which is interesting because of the way she was projecting herself, I suppose, but also what people think when they see someone who's so highly, vividly coloured and out there and metaphysical. They're only thinking about that, not what is the soul that's behind it. So that's interesting that she noticed that. She was very astute. She was really, she was aware of how she affected people, and you know, she didn't care. She didn't give a shit. That's what I love about her. Now, when she got to the age of 58, so from 58 onwards, the rest of her life was governed by the number 4 in the position of you know, the conditions in the background of her life. And the 4 is usually hard work, so a little bit of struggle, feeling like frustrated, like you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but it's also health issues. And it's something that I'm focused on for myself, because I have a double whammy in my later years of the 4 in the life cycles and the 4 in the pinnacles. So that's something I'm we're watching, trying to. But for her, she did end up with cancer. Mind you, she lived until 73. And I remember her telling me that, you know what, if I end up in a hospital just waiting to die, I want someone to come in and break me out and just throw me over the bridge of the Yarra River. And I said, no one's going to do it. She said, yeah, exactly, that's what I want though. And I had dropped off, and I'm always, I kick myself. She said to me when we first met, she wanted to draw me. She wanted me to sit for her, and I really wanted to, but because of work, I could never make it happen. And I'm not, it sounds sort of egotistical, but when I heard she died, I was heartbroken, because I was thinking, oh, and she died in hospital. Oh, that's what she didn't want. But then I thought, oh, I've never got a chance to sit for her. I always regret that, but stuff happens and then you move on. So, and that would have been an ego thing, just to have myself in her style of artwork would have been lovely. I did actually write her a poem and she loved it. I don't know if it was ever kept or if the trust has kept it, but not that it matters, I'm no one. Anyway, so yeah, so the last part of a year was governed by number 4, a lot of health issues. But the interesting thing is, between the ages of 40 and 49, she had opportunities with spirituality. She was governed by the number 7 in the pinnacles, in the opportunities part of her life between those ages 40 to 49. She was very spiritual if you look at her artwork. I mean, when she was going through the drug withdrawals, you know, years and years beforehand, the artwork was often black and white and quite stark, stunning. But when she started healing and, you know, getting older, she started using more colour vibrantly, even using gold leaf, and beautiful work. So the number 7, I know she was really into different goddesses. I know one of the artworks that she did was, I'd love to see it again, was the Madonna of Del Arco. Which was the saint who eats your sorrows. I find that fascinating. But she did a beautiful piece on that. But she was definitely hooking into her spirituality. Someone, I forget who, but they made a documentary about her. They called her the Witch of Positano, because everybody assumed she was, just because of the way she dressed. And in essence, aren't we all witches? I mean, she was using magic in her womanly way. But from the age 49 and onwards, she was governed by the number 3. And what I love about that is because the 3 is creativity, it's expression, communication. Sometimes it can mean misrepresenting what you want to say and feeling like people don't get you. But it's also scattered. So I know in her later years she was scattered. I had a feeling, I'm not sure, but she wasn't, her money situation wasn't that good. There were times when I would buy and bring her stuff and it turned out she needed more and I would just run out and get it. Or if we did go and have drinks, I had no issue to pay for her because I just thought she's wonderful, who wouldn't? And I'm sure her whole life she had people paying for her, but I just feel bad that at the end of her life it was a little bit more, not what she really wanted. But I will say for her, not that I get to speak for her, but she lived a very full, rich life, touched a lot of lives. And she herself had such a courageous, strong soul. And I think her numbers do reflect that. I find it interesting with the 5 being the destiny that her life was about being the hub. She really was. I mean, everyone just gravitated towards her and would even take the trek up the steep mountain to her home to visit her at times, but then you had to get past the hordes of dogs. But her spirit as a woman, as someone who was deeply spiritual, artistic and strong and didn't take shit from anybody. I mean, I realised today, like I said this morning, I woke up and just felt like I've got to rededicate myself to the pagan path because I didn't feel the fire like it used to. And it dawned on me the reason why that dampened down is because I allowed my atheistic side to try to apply a scientific model to my spirituality, which was just as bad as a religious person trying to dogmatize spirituality. So when I went to the retreat, the Pennuel Ridge retreat, I managed to suspend all that, and since then I've still been open. And I had an epiphany the other day when the words entered my head, why doesn't help? And what that means is me always trying to, qualify and quantify everything and figure it all out from a scientific method. It didn't work with spirituality. When you want to hook with the divine, you don't have to explain it to anybody. But that's what I wish religious people would remember, not to over-explain and push it down people's throats. But that's an epiphany I had. And this morning when I realised, yes, I am a witch. I can say I'm a hedge witch, but I'm a witch. The power I felt surging through me, and to have this idea today to do this numerological profile and just flippantly thinking, oh, I'll do Vali Myers. And as I'm working through and looking at her chart, and I'm thinking, this is perfect, that today is the day that I had the idea and that she's the one I thought of, because I mean, to me, she's almost a patron saint. And I was thinking about deities. Who would I dedicate to myself to? It's usually either Hecate or Bastet in Egyptian mythology. But I was thinking, why not use a live person who really meant a lot to me, who I knew, who touched my soul and who touched many of other souls, and who I aspire to be in terms of the artistic creativity and just the life that she led, being her wild, free self. So anyway, I'm waffling. So I hope this was interesting to you. I'm going to do more of these. I was hoping to maybe do the Beat Generation, the Holy Trinity, Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg and William Burroughs. But I might throw in, Mr. Snyder and Mr. Corso. I don't know. I'm a big, huge beat aficionado. But there'll be other historical characters too. And I really hope that if you feel so inclined to just email me with your current full name and your date of birth, I'm happy to do one of these profiles, talk about you. If you want to send a couple of photos, of course it'd be free, but of course you'd have to sign an agreement that I promised that I wouldn't monetize, blah blah blah. I don't know, we'll figure it out. But if you want me to do it, just send me an email. It's kellyproudfoot@gmail.com. Otherwise, please subscribe. I'm hungry for subscribers. And like the video, that'd be awesome. And if you have any ideas about where you'd like me to take these readings in the future, let me know.